Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And in any given week, we always have a packed menu of issues worthy of discussion. This week is no different. So I want to begin by welcoming each and every one of you, in particular those of you who are joining us on television from Mahaica to West Coast Berbice. Good evening. Good evening to all the folks who are joining us in Region 6 or from Region 6 on television on the east bank of the Berbice River to New Amsterdam, to Kanji, and then all the way to Molson Creek along the Quarantine Coast. Good evening. Good evening to our viewers who are joining us from Freedom Radio, Georgetown, Guyana. Welcome to all of you and good evening. Last but not least, the tens of thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live from my page and from many, many other different platforms. Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. And I want to invite you, as I would normally do, to share this program so that as many of your friends and followers can become part of the audience. I see Flatty Singh is on. Flatty is from, I believe, Philadelphia. Kapil Dev Sadhu, Shamo Gir from New York, Vijay Ram Kumar, Omar Kemraj, Ahmad Ali from Toronto, Mavis Bagwandin, Bhagwan Das. Mavis, happy birthday. I see it's your birthday. Parvati from New York. Mavis is from New York as well. William Reddy from Queens, New York. I saw Howard Samaru from Florida. Pamela Singh, Brad Bridgelal from Canada. Jyotis Prasad, and so many of you. Please share this program. Press that share button on your phone or on your television, whatever device you're using. Share this program, share this live feed, so as many of the persons that you have on your page can join our discussions. Ravi Jaichan is watching. I see Herman Bacchus, Stan Vini, Chaitramram Charitar. So we have already a few hundreds of you who are joining us on Facebook Live. As I said, I want to read your comments. I want to know that you are watching, and I want to interact with you. So please share your comments with me and also share the program so that all your friends and your followers can be part of our audience tonight. I want to begin by, first of all, reiterating and informing you that CPL cricket is here in Guyana, and we have thousands of Guyanese from overseas and thousands of foreigners from across the Caribbean, Europe, the United States, and further afield who are in Guyana to be part of CPL and to be part of Guyana's first cricket carnival. There are a series of activities that have been planned to coincide with this period where Guyana will be hosting the CPL cricket matches. So those of you who are visiting, as well as my Guyanese brethren and sisters who are in Guyana, make sure not only that you are part of the cricket festival and the cricket carnival, but ensure also that you are in the ground and part of the celebrations. Guyana, as you know, will be hosting the finals, semi-finals, and finals. So it's a big thing. It's the first time Guyana will be hosting the finals and semi-finals, or the semi-finals and finals, and we will be doing so for the next 3 successive years. So Guyana is the place to be during the month of September for the next 3 years. Mark that on your calendar from now and ensure that you are part of the celebrations that will be taking place in Guyana over the next week or so and in the next 2 years beyond 2022. So it's grand celebration, but please celebrate safely. Don't overdo the drinking. Do not drink and drive. Ensure that your conduct is lawful and do not throw caution to the wind. You can party and you can partake in all the festivities and celebrations, and you can do so safely, enjoyably, and with your health intact, so that next year you come again to be part of this massive celebration taking place in Guyana. So the cricket is here, and I will see you at the stadium and will join you at the stadium. The other thing I want to begin with, or rather what I want to begin with, is to note for your attention a news piece carried in certain sections of the media informing that Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament for APNU AFC, has written apparently to the Commissioner of Information seeking the remuneration package for the recently appointed commissioners who are to inquire into the 2020 March general elections. Mahipal wants to know the remuneration package. Now, it must be clear from the beginning, and we knew this, and you know this, you knew this all along, that APNU AFC would be vehemently opposed to the COI for obvious reasons. They are mortally afraid of the COI uncovering the role that they played in the various attempts that were made to alter in a fraudulent manner the results of the March 2nd, 2020 elections. And anytime expose is imminent, those who are guilty are going to naturally object. And you are seeing the manifestation of the objections, the manifestation of the pandemonium, the manifestation of the hysteria unfolding. They don't want this commission at all. And you know the reason why. So they have been objecting. They said it will interfere with their petition. It will interfere with court cases. And they are writing from all angles. Now they are bringing in the cost factor. So let me make it abundantly clear that the COI is an expensive undertaking, as any COI staffed with the caliber of commissioners with which this COI is staffed, and the caliber of staff that will work along with the commissioners. It is an expensive undertaking. I have indicated to the press already, however, that such an undertaking is necessary and it is important, and that a monetary value cannot be placed on the benefits that are going to be derived from this initiative. The benefits are that those who acted in concert with those who are part of the rigging cabal to rig those election results must be exposed so that the public will know them and appropriate actions can be taken thereafter. Secondly, that their role and what transpired must be inquired into and put on the public permanent record of this country so that future generations will know who they are and what role they played or they attempted to play in the destruction of this country. And thirdly, that this exposure and the consequences that will flow from it must redound to this not happening again. This undertaking must form the basis of a deterrent from persons who may be similarly inclined in the future. This inquiry must act to prevent this inquiry and its report must prevent others from ever attempting the type of atrocity that we witnessed on March 2nd, 2020, and the events that followed therefrom. That is the importance of the COI. And why is that important? Because from 1968 to 1985, Guyana and Guyanese endured rigged elections in this country, resulting in political dictatorship and authoritarianism. That led to the breakdown of law and order. It led to the destruction of the economy, resulting in Guyana becoming a bankrupt country, and it destroyed the lives of generations of people. And Guyana has not yet recovered from those decades of degeneration and destruction. This entire country was pauperized. Guyanese children were malnutritioned. Guyanese ran from this land and left all their belongings and valuables here just to get away from political dictatorship and violence. Politicians murdered their political opponents in the style of governance that was being practiced. This inquiry must ensure that those things do not happen. And if you think that this inquiry is expensive, well, then you assess the monetary value of the destruction which took place when elections have been rigged in this country. And then you will understand that the monies that are going to be expended here is of a minuscule value when you compare the damage that rigged elections have done to Guyana and its people. So, yes, Mahipal, it is going to be an expensive undertaking. And I want to assure that every single cent of the monies that are going to be expended will be made public because it is public funds. We are going to make it public. But they are not worried about the money. What they are worried about is the exposure. What they are worried about is what the Commission of Inquiry may expose. That is what they are worried about. And the consequential actions which may flow therefrom. So, the monies expended and to be expended are going to be made public. They have to be appropriated from the Parliament. So it's not a secret commission. So Mahi Paul doesn't have to go and write any commissioner of information. The information will be made public. And the government and the people of Guyana will benefit tremendously from that expenditure, as they are benefiting now, because their will was respected at the last elections. Mahi Paul and his grouping wanted to catapult us back into dictatorship, into bankruptcy, into destruction. That is what they wanted. We are not going back there. Not this generation of Guyanese. We are not going back there. That is where they want us to go. So it's not about money. It was never about money. It is what they want. And where would we have been if we didn't get 100 countries, governments to come out and support us? Where would Guyana have been today? Were those elections allowed to be rigged? Guyana today would have been a pariah. You think CPL finals would have been hosted here? You think that billions and billions of dollars of investments that are flooding this land would have been here? You think the tens of thousands of foreigners who are in this country today would have been here? You think the many five-star hotels that are being constructed and the various investment opportunities that are unfolding in Guyana, you think that would have been here if those elections were rigged, were allowed to be rigged? Guyana would have been again a pariah. The CARICOM would have shunned us. The US government would have shunned us. The European Union would have shunned us. And the 100 countries that stood on our side and stood on the side of democracy would have considered us a pariah and treated with us at arm's length. We would have been starving today. That is what would have happened to Guyana. Guyana would have been a destroyed country today, 2 years hence. 2 years hence, because the elections results were not allowed to be contaminated. Guyana is on a road to prosperity. And that is the reality that nobody can change. So they can talk from now until thy kingdom come. That reality will not change. So I thought that I'll deal with that issue before I go on to the main content of what I want to speak about. So let's see what they have to say here. Well, people are making their comments. But what I want to speak about is this trend that is developing. And I've spoken about it many times on this program. And it is this. The opposition in Guyana cannot point to a track record of theirs of performance. They can't competently and constructively criticize this government on developmental policies, on the way the economy is performing. They can't question the preponderance of investments taking place in the country. They can't seriously quarrel about the rate of infrastructural development. They have no credibility when it comes to things like law and order and constitutionality and democracy. And that leaves them with nothing else but to fabricate allegations of racial discrimination. That is the only card that they have in the pack left that they can speak to. So every single day they come out with one false narrative after another. And it is important that every time they come out with this narrative, we and you, the Guyanese people who know differently, we have a duty not only to reject publicly this misleading narrative, but also expose what they did on the ground of racism when they were in government. So, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Norton, read an entire statement today at his press conference dealing with PPP's discrimination. And he spoke specifically about land issues and how the PPP is discriminating in relation to land and taking away land from Afro-Guyanese and giving it to Indo-Guyanese. And I'm going to deal with allegations after allegations which he has made. But before I get there, he has opened the door for me to speak about which government has a history of seizing people's property. Now, the PNC, when they were in government from 1966 to 1992, 1964 to 1992, they have a long record of seizing people's property and paying little or no compensation whatsoever. And that was a governmental policy of theirs. If you don't support their political party, then they use the legal mechanism that was available to confiscate people's property. And the law at that time, as the law does now, authorizes the state to compulsorily acquire property for public purpose. And that public purpose is stated in the law. It must be for a developmental purpose. The law then, however, and we changed the law then allowed the state to pay a 1939 valuation of that property. And the law further provided that no one could have questioned the value paid by the government in a court of law. That was the law that they had in Guyana when they seized people's property. And of course, it was a dictatorship. That was the law that they had. You could seize the property and you were required to pay only a 1939 valuation. And that decision, that valuation, or the quantum that they paid, was not questionable in a court of law. Using that law, dozens and dozens of properties were seized by the PNC government. And not for developmental purposes. They were seized simply because, for political reasons and whimsical and capricious reasons. 3 properties that come to mind is the Sankar estate at Hope was seized and paid 1939 valuation. The building that used to house a place called Saijan Plaza was owned by a man named Singh. They seized that and they converted it into Saijan Plaza, a place where you had to go and buy things only with US dollars. Another property that comes to mind is where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is. Tacuba Lodge, they seized that from the Kissoon's family, paying peppercorn compensation, 1939 valuation. They seized a series of homes from Afro-Guyanese in West Rumveld, sorry. And as Attorney General between 2011 and 2015, I invited those people to take the government to court. I was the Attorney General. And I went to court and I consented, and those people got back all their houses. And when I inquired of them why these properties were taken away, you know what they told me? That Burnham suspected that their parents were Rodney supporters, were supporters of the WPA. And he took away dozens of properties in West Rumveld. Those people may be listening to me. It is the PPP government that gave back those people. And they were all Afro-Guyanese. The thing is that we don't make these things public. I was the Attorney General who did that for the PPP government. One of the changes that we made to the Constitution was that we removed that offensive provision that allowed the government to only pay 1939 value, and we changed that to market value, current market value, so that the state now can acquire property but must pay market value for it and must only acquire for a developmental purpose. And anyone can question it in the court of law. That is how we have changed the law. Norton, Mr. Norton, his hero is Forbes Burnham. He should be the last one in the PNC, of which he's the leader, should be the last one to talk about proprietary interest and proprietary rights in this country. They have no track record. They have a track record of seizing people's property and paying them 2 cents. That is why so many people fled this country and went and applied for refugee status in Canada and all over the place. They left their property and ran because nothing was safe. They were not safe and their properties were not safe. And today, Aubrey Norton believes that people will forget that. And he is lecturing people. Let me fast forward to when they were in government. And you have been listening to me for years, and I've highlighted how many properties they seized while they were in government. Just 2015 to 2020, the rice farmers from West Coast Berbice are still there. 50 leases they took one time. David Granger revoked them all. They seized the Red House from the Chedi Jagan Institute. All of that we had to go to court and win. That was only the other day. And this guy is speaking about unlawful land acquisition. And I'm going to deal with the allegations, but I just want you to reflect. And it's not that they didn't give lands, they gave lands, but only to their cronies and friends, as I keep saying, and I'm going to deal with some of them right here in answer to these allegations that Mr. Norton has made. So I want to put this land issue, this acquisition of land and the seizure of land into a context to show that the PNC and Aubrey Norton should never be speaking on these issues because of what they have done in government. And you know, that is it. They will never be able to run away from their history and their past. They want people to forget it. That's why they keep changing their names. APNU, PNCR, PNC. But it's the same people. The people of Guyana gave them a chance between 2015 and 2020. And they did exactly what they were accustomed to doing. So let us deal with the press conference now. Now let me begin by recognizing that when they were in the government, they shared out hundreds and hundreds of acres of state land. They sold them, they leased them without any public advertisement process, without any public process whatsoever. And that is why only their friends and cronies benefited. There was no public advertisements that Guyanese saw to say that Wales Estate, one can go there and apply for land, or Ogle lands were being sold, or at Providence land was being sold. No advertisement. So that the public, the ordinary Guyanese, never had an opportunity of knowing that this option was available to them. Yet, hundreds of acres of land were gifted away in the most non-transparent manner. And when you examine the transaction one by one, none of the transactions were paid for. None were fully paid for. Not a single one of them. Some of them, a few percent was paid down, and people got title, and people got full leases. The lands were landlocked, most of them. They were so incompetent that they didn't even demarcate road and delineate the land. So one land was behind another. There was no road to get to the land. And none of the people paid off for these lands, but they all got title and leases. That is why when we went into government, 90% of the people came forward and gave us back the land. Voluntarily, they gave up the land because they realized, one, they can't pay for it. Two, they couldn't get to the land. They were landlocked. There was no road or nothing. Three, none of them could complete the sales, or many of them couldn't complete by paying off the balance of the purchase price. The entire thing stank to heaven. The corruption was repulsive, the level of corruption. And as I said, more than 90% of the people came in and they gave back their title and they said they don't want any problem. They understood. There is a man who got 200 acres of land, 200 acres. And you know what the agreement says? Somewhere in Ogle. That is what the agreement says. 200 acres at $1 million per acre. $1 million per acre at Ogle, one of the primest pieces of real estate in the country. 200 acres, $1 million per acre. And his agreement says somewhere in Ogle. He doesn't have a diagram. He doesn't have a plan. That guy is afraid to come and even ask where the land is. Because as soon as he comes forward, I believe the police ought to be called in. That is the level of vulgarity and skullduggery I'm speaking about. Trevor Benn, who was the head of lands and surveys, was never given the authority by President Granger to sell land. State land in Guyana vests in the president. Only he has the power to authorize how the land can be dealt with. And he can give you power to lease or to sell. He never trusted Trevor Benn. He never gave him power to sell. But Trevor Benn sold several pieces of land and passed title to cronies. All passed illegally. We settled with those people. We settled with them. Sivan's Waste Management is one of them. Wilfred Branford is another. They came in and they said, look, they want to settle. They understand that a criminal act was committed, and we settled with them. They are Afro-Guyanese. They gifted a wharf to BK, an Indian man. A wharf value $8 billion. They give him for 20 million Guyana dollars. I spoke at length about it. $20 million he paid for $8 billion property. And he gets a clean title. 10% of the purchase price. 10% of the purchase price he pays, and he gets a full transport. He's Indian. We are going behind him too. I spoke an hour on that case that is ongoing in the High Court. So having said that, let's move into what Norton is saying now. Norton says that the PPP government took away land from an African Guyanese who owns an organization called Caring for Others Guyana Inc., Miss Elsine Richmond Shockley. He says that the PPP took away this land from this lady because she's Afro-Guyanese. Well, I have the transaction here. I have the paper here. This land is 3 acres of commercial land at Providence. 3 acres of commercial land at Providence was leased to this woman in 2017, leased to this organization for 20 years, and she never paid, leased, and she was supposed to pay a deposit of $1,950 US plus VAT, $1,950 US plus VAT, 3 acres of commercial land. Per year, and never paid a cent. 2,000 US a year and never paid a cent from 2017 to September 2020. Not even the deposit. Not even the deposit to sign the lease. Look, the lease is signed. And never paid even the deposit, not even the first month rent. Nisil, the landlord, took back the land because there was no consideration in the contract. The contract is null and void. Norton today said on his program that the PPP took it back because the woman is Afro-Guyanese. That is the type of dangerous racism that they are spewing every single day. They say that we are taking legal actions to get back property at Wales and in more. But let them say what process was embarked upon for these people to get these property at Wales and in more. Many of the people are giving up the properties. They are giving up the properties because they recognize the illegality. But I'll move on. He says that PPP is regularizing Pigeon Island while bulldozing Afro-Guyanese at Mocha. Pigeon Island, as you know, is a squatter settlement that is more than 50 years old. Most of the persons in Pigeon Island have transports for their property. Most of them. There are a few, and these people are there 50 years. The mayor of Georgetown lives in Pigeon Island. I am sure he has transport. The mayor of Georgetown, Aubrey Norton mayor. There are a few people who need to be regularized, and yes, the government will regularize them. As the government is regularizing number 4, number 5, and I believe number 3 village on West Coast Berbice, all Afro-Guyanese villages. And I am leading that initiative on behalf of the government. Number 5, number 4, and the other village next door, I can't remember what number it is. I'm not sure it's number 3. They are all Afro-Guyanese village that we are regularizing now. We are regularizing the backlands of Golden Grove and Haslington. Those are Afro-Guyanese communities. Norton went there after I left. Those are Afro-Guyanese communities that we are regularizing. But Mr. Norton, we don't look at it on the basis of race. And that is your problem. That is the PNC's problem. Now the people at Mocha that he's making reference to have been living on a particular government reserve for over 30 years. It's a government reserve. They are squatting there. Since 2008, the government begun to engage them to move. Since 2008. It's about 30 persons. The highway, the alternative highway running from Diamond, running from Mandela Avenue through Eccles, will have to pass there eventually. And they are directly in the path of where the road has to pass. And the Ministry of Housing went in there recently and have worked out settlement arrangements with 30 persons, 30 families, and are moving them to Farm Phase 2 and Plantation Horstelling, 2 neighborhood communities, and giving them lands to move and paying them also compensation. Norton, with a straight face, says that the government is bulldozing these people. Now there are a few, I think 2 or 3, who are causing some problems, and the government will have to find a way of dealing with them. Because that is the cost of development. It happens all over the world. And that is why you have a state power to compulsory acquire. So the government will have to compulsory acquire and pay them compensation. When we built the Berbice Bridge, we had to move dozens of family and compensate them. And they were Indians. When we built the Hope Canal, we had to move dozens of families, both Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese, and they were all compensated. The Demerara Harbour Bridge, the new Harbour Bridge, we have to move again. We have to take back the lands of dozens of people, Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese, and pay them compensation. The Schoonard Road that we are building right now involves the taking back of several plots of land from mostly Indo-Guyanese. We are building the pipeline now from Schoonard all the way to Wales. Dozens of plots of land have to be acquired by the state. Most of them Indo-Guyanese, some Afro-Guyanese. Norton chooses to identify Mocha to say that we are bulldozing Afro-Guyanese property. I am taking my time here so that the Guyanese people can understand the agenda of these guys and how they are distorting information to prosecute their case of racism. He then says that the PPP taking away Afro-Guyanese land from Kurukuru Co-op to give to PPP supporters. I spoke to the Minister of Cooperatives, Joseph Hamilton, and he says that what the co-op officer has done at Kurukuru Co-op is to dismantle the co-op because they're not accounting, they're not doing anything for the residents, and they're just holding on to office. And their books are in total disorder. Their accounting records not in compliance with the law. The chief co-op officer exercising powers under the Cooperatives Act set up an interim management committee of the same village, the same community. And the government now is working with that community, and lands have been cleared for the first time for roads to go into this community. Roads are going there, but government is doing it. A police station will be built there shortly, and a health center. These are not facilities that this community ever had before. But all Norton can see is that PPP government taking away lands from black people to give to PPP supporters. And his mind, PPP supporters, you know what he means by PPP supporters? He means Indo-Guyanese. That is the racism, and that's what I'm saying, that this crop of PNC leaders and leaders in the opposition are incapable of leadership. They are not worthy to lead anybody in this country. And the Guyanese people, I am sure, are slowly coming to this realization. He speaks about some co-op in Essequibo. Minister Joe Hamilton issued 2 statements last week about this co-op in Essequibo. And yet he continues with this lie. And then look what he says about, then he goes to his favorite hunting ground, Linden. And he says the PPP and PPP taking away land from Linden. This guy, between 2006 to 2011, I've said it many times in this program, thousands of residents of Region 10 were given small forestry concessions for the first time under this government, under PPP government. They were given forestry concessions. APNU government bankrupted all of them between 2015 to 2020. Bankrupted all of them. The only area, the only region in the country that had 2 loan programs, Leaf and Lend, was Linden. Leaf and Lend, 2 loan programs for small businesses under the PPP government. And I can go on to speak about it, but let me stick to the land. I went in 2020, after the elections, sometime in October 2020, I was part of a cabinet outreach to Linden. I went into the mines, and the people of Linden, I'm sure they voted for APNU. They showed me some bushes, forests, and they pointed to me and they said, that is where APNU gave us house lots. Nothing is demarcated, but they don't know, but each one of them got a number. And they don't know where the number is, what the number relates to. Nothing is demarcated, nothing is lotted out. The thing is not even weeded. It's overgrown with bushes and trees. And they just give them one chit and they said, right there your house lots are. That is what they are doing to their own supporters. From 2020 to 2022, from August 2020 to 2022, the PPP government has distributed 416 house lots in Linden alone. 416 house lots in Linden alone. Amelia Ward. In 2 years. This is more than APNU AFC did in 5 years. The statistics are there. We did more in 2 years for Linden in terms of house lot distribution that APNU AFC did in 5 years. And this Norton, I don't think he knows anything. This guy picks up information at the street corner. This is how an opposition leader will speak. This is the type of disinformation you would spread. The PPP will be building 500 houses. 500 houses in the next few years in Linden. That is our promise. That is our promise. 500 houses in Linden. And Norton seeks to speak about land and land distribution and accuse us, the PPP, of discrimination. So I thought that I'll spend some time to just look at his press statement and go through a few paragraphs. These people don't understand development. They don't understand anything associated with progress. Nothing. All they want. Let me stop there for the time being and move to something else. So last week, I spoke about what they submitted at GCOM, the information which they claim supports their allegations that there was multiple voting and that dead people voted and that there was voter impersonation at the 2020 elections. Recall that? Well, I wrote the chairman of GCOM and I asked for the information. I thought that these people would want the thing to be investigated. It is their complaint. And lo and behold, when I asked for that information, hell break loose. They start to object and jump and run and scramble and scream. There are 3 commissioners in there voted against it. In the commission, they voted against it. And these are 3 commissioners who are talking all about it, all over the place. And now the government is trying to have the thing investigated. They're jumping and screaming. They don't want no investigation. And you must know why. But they come up with a new narrative now. Last week, I said that when I looked at the information, it's about 600 or 700 names. and about 500 persons came out publicly whose names were on that list and said, we are here. We are neither dead nor in America. So that the 500 people alone blew their whole case apart. So Roysdale Ford was then forced to come out and say that there were a few mistakes made. And I also made the point last week that it's only about 500 to 600, and let us assume that all those votes were given to them. They lost the elections by 15,000 votes. So 400 or 500 votes would not have made a difference. They listened to me last week, and this week the narrative changed. They said that they submitted thousands of names to GCOM. Their narrative completely changed. It is in Norton's press statement. It is in Sherwood Low's letter in the newspapers. Now they are claiming, suddenly, you heard them all the time, that they submitted the document to GCOM. Now when I pointed out, it's less than 700 people, and if you give them all the votes, it makes no difference because they lost the election by 15,000. Suddenly their story changes, and there's now thousands of names they submitted to GCOM. I tell you, this is a special breed of people, a special pedigree. I have never seen a pack of dishonest people than this group here. So when you submit any document to GCOM, there must be a signature. Let them show evidence that they submitted thousands of documents, thousands of names to GCOM. Their commissioners are right there. These documents that they submitted were discussed at commission meetings. They don't know that people will know these things. They don't even attempt to tell an intelligent lie. They tell lies that nursery school children can unearth. Nursery school students can decipher and rip apart their lies. They can't even lie properly. What amazes me though is the barefacedness of the lies. Because only last week, you said this and you make a big issue of it. And now this week your story radically changed. I mean, you are stupid. We know that. You think the rest of the population that stupid? I could understand that you are stupid. I think the whole world knows that. But you got to understand that the rest of the world are intelligent people. Are intelligent people. And the more they tell these lies, the more and more incredible they are becoming. And when they become more incredible, the more desperate they become, the bigger the race card will become. Because that is the only last line of salvation. That is their last line. So, I have exhausted my entire hour and I didn't even realize it. I now was going to look at the comments to engage you, but my reporter is signaling to me that we have come to program time. I have put a lot of information out there. I hope that this information is made, proper use of this information is made, and most importantly, that I've been able to debunk, I hope that I've been able to debunk the ridiculous, because that's all it is, the ridiculous and nonsensical lies peddled by the opposition. Win people's respect. If you're incapable of the truth, try to win people's respect by telling an intelligent lie. Make it a little sophisticated. You can't tell a lie that every school child listening to you will know. Your story changes every time you get caught. Every time you get caught, your story changes. How do something better than that? You're the main opposition party in the country, unfortunately. But I don't think that will be there for long. Somebody else got to replace you. Somebody else got to replace this bunch. This is the worst bunch of politicians in the independent Caribbean. The PNC, APNU, AFC. And on that note, I want to thank you very much for spending the last hour with me. I think that we have had a very constructive engagement. I may have been a little agitated, a little energized, but the cricket carnival is in the air, and I had to deal with a lot of misinformation. And sometimes you have to keep the adrenaline going. So thank you once again. And those of you who are in Guyana from the US, Canada, North America, the Caribbean, I hope we meet up. And if not, I'll see you next week to resume our discussions. Thank you very much. Good evening.